So, HR for startups, what to do when things are falling apart. So, we usually hear about how awesome it is to build a fantastic company and how much time people have to get things done, how much money they have to invest in their employees. But for a lot of startups I've worked with, a lot of you are overworked, or you're currently banging out an email on your laptop right now while I'm talking to you on this microphone, all good. And you don't exactly have time to build a world-class HR system. But there are things that you need to do to make sure that you have a good enough HR system so that you can take care of your employees and actually produce a good product. So I'm going to be talking about that. So we're going to talk about compensation, benefits, the interview process, and dealing with breaking points. So what I tell some of the founders I speak to is being an entrepreneur is all about trading problems. So your problem is finding product market fit, then your next product is finding people who are interested in it, third problem is trying to figure out if someone's going to pay for it, then the fourth problem is scaling, and then so on and henceforth. So you're constantly just dealing with different types of problems. As I mentioned in the beginning, I don't think you're like Scrooge McDuck. You don't have millions of dollars. I recognize that money is tight. You're fighting many fires, and also you are maybe pre-product market fit, or you just reached product market fit. So this is the cycle of pain that usually a lot of founders go through. You have a great idea. You run and go tell your mom and dad, I have a startup. You might get some play on Facebook or Instagram. People are interested. And then after a couple of days, you're like, oh shit, I really have to deliver on what I talked about. So then you go into this whole entire pit of despair, where basically you're going through sorrow and issues, you're constantly getting kicked in the stomach, dealing with rejection, dealing with employee rebellions and things like that. But then some people make it to the promised land where you start getting traction, and eventually you could get to liquidity, someone could buy you, and then you find yourself back on TechCrunch for a success. So when you do reach a crisis or issue in your company, I usually try to boil it down to the three circles that basically interconnect. You have your founder, your employees, and your company. And what you'll find is once you start growing your company as a founder, the smallest decisions that you make or conversations you have with your employees will reverberate through your organization and have huge impacts in the company. That's why you'll see in some large organizations when it comes to culture or it comes to how the decision-making process is done, it usually can trace its way back to the initial interactions that founders had when they started the company. In Ben Horowitz's book, Hard Thing About Hard Things, he talks about peacetime and wartime CEOs. So typically peacetime CEOs are the people when they've gotten their funding, they have a lot of money coming in, things are good, so now you can start focusing on more touchy-feely stuff, like making sure there's enough kale inside the restaurants, making sure that there's free bus travel, making sure that everyone's feeling good and they're happy. But then, once you get in a situation where no one wants to buy your product and you're running out of money, you have to make wartime decisions. You might have to ruffle some feathers. You might have to have difficult conversations. You might have to start firing people. You might start having to make decisions that might run against your core cultural beliefs in order to win certain situations. And there are negatives and positives involved in this situation, but these are things that people are doing to survive, to make their company thrive. So key thing is when you hit your first crisis point, I mean, this is something you should be knowing on a regular basis, is what's your burn rate? Burn rate's basically all of your expenses to keep the doors open. So your labor costs, your cost to run your machinery, your cost for marketing, your cost of closing sales. You should have that in the back of your mind at all times, and that should be influencing some of your decisions. By knowing your burn rate, that basically tells you how much time you can run an experiment in your company. So if your burn rate's 3 months and you think an experiment like redesigning your UX is going to take maybe 3 or so weeks for the customers to fully understand it and another week to see results, then you have about 3 months left of experiments. By doing this, this puts constraints on your thinking and your thought process regarding what new experiments you're going to run for your company, but also more importantly, who you're thinking about hiring, and if certain hires are critical hires. There are situations where startups get funding, they go and start hiring a lot of people. You'll start seeing people who are like career guru or someone who's like Jedi Master or whatnot. They're really fun people and they're excellent, but they might not be doing critical things that are keeping the lights on for your company. So you have to ask yourself, if we reduce this company back down to its original core or what it was, the people we're hiring, are they absolutely critical for getting this product shipped? And you also have to make it brutally clear to all your employees like what our goals are. So there's a gentleman who started a company called SumoMe, and he makes it clear to his employees that we need to hit about $1 million in reoccurring run rate and revenue by our first year or whatnot. And he keeps on constantly telling his employees that's what our goal is, that's what we have to hit, to make it very clear. When Facebook was started, the only thing Mark Zuckerberg cared about was increasing user growth. You gotta have your mantra of what's important so you can use that as a focusing function towards what you're gonna be doing next to your company. Then managing your people. One startup I'm working with, this kid's a really brilliant student. He went to Harvard and is in the process of maybe dropping out, and he's grown this company to $1.8 million in revenue run rate in 1 year. And he's now has about 14, 15 employees, and he's finding out, oh, wait a minute, I can't do everything here at this company. Yet he was still trying to do everything in this company. And what a good manager does is they provide their employees with the ability to accomplish their goals, and they provide their employees with the ability of understanding that they're trusted and respected, and they allow them to get their work done, while also recognizing that we all think that no one else can do our jobs better than us, but in all actuality, there's plenty of people who can do our jobs better than us. And as a good CEO, you have to constantly realize that you need to be amplifying your employees. You also need to be able to set the proper expectations of what your employees should and shouldn't be doing, so there shouldn't be any confusion. So if you have met with your employees and had one-on-ones, and you have told them repeatedly what they need to get done or what they need to be able to ship, it should be very clear to them when they're not missing if there are missing expectations. If you find yourself talking to an employee after a couple of months after they've been screwing up, and they are shocked about your feedback to them, then you as a manager have made a mistake of not getting on the same page with them and setting expectations. Another thing is managing yourself. What you should be asking yourself every day is, what is the one thing I can do right now for my business, for the marketing or product management, that will make everything else easier for you? So your one thing could be, hey, if we do not focus on getting another round of fundraising, then this whole entire company's done. So every day we need to make sure we focus on getting that done. It's more important than any firefighting or anything else. Because when you're running a startup, a lot of founders, once they hit their success point of maybe finding product market fit or the product starts working, they can find themselves in a situation where they're fighting fires and they're in defense mode, where they're just reacting to what's going on, but they're not focusing on going on the offense, which is building a stronger product, which solves other issues for you. If you're constantly on the defense mode and not thinking about your key priorities, you're never going to build anything that's going to be of importance. How often are you speaking to your customers? So I was meeting with the CEO of kayak.com, and his engineers told him originally, we don't talk to the customers because that's not our job, that's sales job. So the CEO went, got a phone, like a red rotary phone, and he put it in the middle of the cubicle, and he put that number on Kayak's website. And so if you ever had a problem, that phone would ring immediately. And so all the engineers had to speak to customers on a regular basis. So all of their bugs all of a sudden started disappearing because the engineers were starting to feel the pain that sales was feeling. So it's really important that you are speaking to new customers on a regular basis, hearing their stories, seeing what issues they have and whatnot. One myth in Silicon Valley is that if you have a great idea, your customers might not understand it, but you're just going to keep pushing through and eventually someone's going to get it. Most of the people who do that are delirious and crazy, and it doesn't work out. For the rest of us mortals, you have to speak to your customers, see what they like, and try to make sure that your product delivers to what they're expecting. Keep your head on straight, because you're going to be in a situation where people are constantly telling you you're doing things wrong. It's like being a politician. No matter what you do, people are going to be angry at you. They're going to want more things from you, and you just really can't satisfy everyone at once. So a good way to keep yourself in check is when you're doing your experiments or making a big decision, write down what your thought patterns were and why you're doing this. So then after the decision is made, you can check back and kind of have a record in seeing where you were mentally when making those decisions. And you will be able to see if maybe your mind sometimes goes to the negative in uncertain situations, or maybe you have an overly optimistic view of the world. And then when you go into another situation where it's unclear what the decision is going to be, you can kind of check yourself so you can make better decisions and have a record. So then you can build some consistency to your thought process and what you're doing for the company. So managerial blind spots. Learn to share your Legos. So we always knew the kid who had one Lego set but wouldn't share anything with anyone. But that kid can only maybe build like a tower. But if the other kids put all their Legos together and they shared, you might be able to build something cool, like a gigantic skyscraper or whatnot. You have to keep in mind as when you're a CEO, the job that you have from month 0 to the 3 months is going to be radically different from 3 months to 6 months, 6 months to 9 months, and so on and henceforth. So you got to constantly be thinking, okay, what are the important things I need to get done? Why am I not doing them right now? What are things that I'm doing that someone else could be doing, and why am I not delegating that to someone else? Because when you start delegating more to your employees, it conveys trust and also provides them with growing opportunities in the organization, and that allows you to focus more on the vision and where the direction of the organization is. This is, I call it the delegator's dilemma. You can have 2 of any of those elements there, but you can't have the 3rd one. So when you delegate something, you could, for instance, say, okay, I want to make sure I want to delegate to someone. I want to keep the cost down. I want to keep the quality high for what I'm doing, and someone's not experienced in what you're asking them to do. It could turn out that when they get the project done, they're probably not going to get it back in the same time constraints you're looking for, not as quickly, because they're going to try to hit your quality standards. You could say to someone you delegate, okay, I'm going to, for instance, try to save time on this and keep the costs low, but in the process, the quality of the final product that you're going to be getting is not going to be as good. So in your mind, when you are delegating things, it's never going to be exactly perfect to your standards, but in order for your organization to grow, you have to pass that stuff on so you can move on to the more important things. Is anyone familiar with baseball, American baseball? Okay, I should have did soccer or some crap. Okay, so this is, or who's seen Moneyball? I know you guys like Brad Pitt. There we go, much better. Okay, so this is the Oakland A's payroll. And you look over here, here's the evil empire New York Yankees, who are terrible. And then you see the amazing, excellent, highly educated world citizens who are the Oakland Athletics. Well, in this year, the Oakland Athletics only had a payroll of about like $25, $30 million, compared to the New York Yankees, who had something where like 5 or 6x of that. Yet the Oakland Athletics were able to make it pretty far in the playoffs with a far cheaper payroll. So when you are thinking about hiring your employees, you got to be thinking, okay, I'm never going to be able to beat a cash offer from like Facebook or LinkedIn or Google or whatnot, because I need to make sure that I'm minimizing my cash burn so I can get more experiments. So what I need to do is make sure I'm using other levers to compensate my employees. Typically, if you're working for a startup, you'll get more stock options or a higher equity package compared to working at Facebook or LinkedIn or whatnot. And the reason why is because Facebook and LinkedIn and Google are sure things. Your startup isn't a sure thing, so you want to pay people on par to their risk level. You want to simplify your hiring process. You don't want to make it like overly burdensome on the people you're interviewing and also your employees who are interviewing the other employees. You want to make sure there's an alignment of company goals to career goals. So with a startup, employees' goals and the goals of the firm are pretty aligned. So if I joined one of your startups and I said to you, hey, you know, I want to start making Barbie dolls for your startup that does things for like self-driving cars, you would probably fire me in a heartbeat because you guys need to get a self-driving car out of the gate. And most of your employees know that, because if the self-driving car does not come out of the gate, then everyone's basically going to get laid off. But as when companies start growing, you're going to start seeing a divergence where some employees start doing things that are not necessarily for the core goals of the organization. And when you hire people, you have to make sure that their intentions are things to strengthen your organization and they don't have other career motives that could work against your company. Not all benefits burn cash, so flexibility, letting people work from home, letting people telecommute and do other things like that, maybe having people get half days on Fridays and stuff like that, things that save you cash, that allow you to be competitive with other offers from marquee companies. So what are you looking for? Let's see here. That was Putin, he's gonna destroy a resume. Okay, so you're looking for someone who has grit and growth. So grit, I mean, is someone who has either worked in a startup or has got some type of failure in their life or dealt with something that hasn't gone their way. Because you do not want to deal with high maintenance babies who expect you to give them the world. You also want people who have shown in their past that they've gone on to take it on themselves for their own personal development. Like, are they taking courses to the side? Are they doing side hustles? Are they trying to make themselves a better person? You also want someone who's a true believer, who really enjoys your product and uses it. If you ask them about your product and they don't know anything really about it, or they give you a blank stare, then you ask that person to politely leave. A true believer someone would say, you know, I use your product, but actually I don't like this feature, and blah, blah, blah. That's someone who's giving it to you real, giving you an outside perspective, and is kind of taking ownership for what you guys are creating. Now, when you're in pre-market fit, product market fit, you tend to be hiring mostly generalists. Someone who could handle the technical code aspects, handle sales, do a little marketing or whatnot, do some cooking, things like that. But then, as your company starts ramping up, you're gonna need someone who's just specialized in marketing, someone who's specialized in finance, so they can take you to the next stage, next level. Hire for strength. And nobody is perfect. So what large companies fail to do is one mistake we make is when we do an interview process, it's overly burdensome where if try to hire a salesperson and they're really good at closing and they might be a little bit pushy, we might turn that person down because we don't like the pushiness. Yet the pushiness is kind of what you want in a salesperson, because you want that person to be persistent and close deals. So when you are looking for someone in your company, realize there's no perfect fit, and for the skills you're looking for, there might be an opposite side that could be a weakness. And say to yourself, okay, what are the top 3 things I'm looking for in this role, and how can this person hit those expectations? And if they're hitting those expectations, and there's no gigantic like cultural red flags or like a serial killer or something crazy like that, then you might have a fit for someone to hire. So the best way for you guys to find your leads, sometimes you'll be told, like, get LinkedIn Recruiter and things like that. I wouldn't waste your money on that. I would start with hot leads, people that you have relationships with, and then go with warm leads. People that are inside your extended network. So you know Joe, Joe knows Mark. Go to Joe, hey, can you give me a warm introduction to Mark? And can you vouch for me that I'm a good dude and I'm not like an axe murderer or whatnot? The mere fact that Joe is putting his name on the line and introducing you to Mark means that he's going to tell you this person is credible. Or you can ask Joe, do you think this person's good? And make it clear to people, like in your email signature, that you're looking for talent, and here's your job description and whatnot. Cold leads, people like way outside your network. What you can do is there's an app called Lead IQ. And if you go on LinkedIn, you find someone you're not connected to, Lead IQ will actually scrape their email from their LinkedIn profile, like 98% accuracy. And now you have their email and you can reach out to them. But don't be a creeper or something. Like, do a general like email, like, because I get random emails all the time. It's like, hey, Jordan, you look like a great fit for our Nigerian banking company, blah, blah, blah. It's like, I'm not an investment banker. Why are you talking to me? So make it tailored to who you're looking for. but also try to make sure you're working inside your network or extended network. And if you know someone who does world-class work, but they're already busy, just go to them. Hey, do you have 3 or 4 people who are rock stars that you could recommend for my company? And then see where they go from there. So I want to take a 5-minute break, but before I do, you guys have done, you know your elevator pitch for your capital raising, right? Raise your hand if you have a 30-second elevator pitch for your company. Okay, Silicon Valley, everyone raises their hand, like even people who don't have a startup raise their hand. So we need to create a 30-second recruiting pitch for your company. And basically, you're explaining to people like, what's your story? What makes you different? What's great about your team? And then how someone could grow and benefit with you. So an example would be like, hey, I'm Jordan Thibodeau. I am CEO of Kale Incorporated. We're like the best kale company ever. All the hippies love us. We have an awesome team, and our team all comes from diverse backgrounds and have great chemistry and whatnot. I think it'd be fantastic if you consider interviewing for a position in our sales role, because I know that you're doing direct sales right now, but you're looking for an opportunity to go into a situation where you can grow maybe into a manager level. So back to where we were. Sometimes you'll find people who are fantastic at interviewing, who are great negotiators and can say everything you want to hear. And then as soon as they sit down at their desk, they forget how to speak English or Spanish, and they suck. So a good way to prevent yourself from that happening is do mini trial periods. You could do a code along to see how they would code with your team in person, to see if there's a fit, to see the style of their work. You could also see if you can bring them on as a temporary employee for a month or so, depending upon your jurisdiction. And then also, you make sure you check their references and backgrounds for people who've worked with them. It's really important. Also, make sure that the interview process is enjoyable. You don't want to make it feel like they're under arrest or getting interrogated by the FBI. You want to make them feel like, oh, hey, this is a pretty cool place to work at. Even if I didn't get the job, I still feel like I got a good shake. Because you might interview a person today, like for me to get into Google, I've been there for 7 years, but I interviewed like 4 or 5 different times for different roles, and I wasn't quite ready for it. But then a year or so later or something, I get the right experience, and I get in, and it works out for me. So don't think purely on the short term. Think about the long term and building relationships, because not only is this person you're gonna interview this person. If they don't get it, they're now going to be telling their friends and family about the experience that they had. And you want them to walk away feeling like they had a really good experience. When it comes to making the hiring decision, sometimes there could be too many cooks in the kitchen. So it's good to have one person who's responsible for making the hire. So if your company gets big enough and you have a CTO and they're doing the interviewing for an engineer, it's their call to decide if this person gets hired or not. Because you could find an engineer that you might not think will work for your culture, but the engineer could feel like the person could add some added value to our culture and also become a good producer for tech contributions. So it's good to let the people who are going to be, in the end, the managers of these new hires be the ones who make the decision to hire or not. Regarding negotiations and compensation, you could find yourself in a situation where somebody is going to feel that they could negotiate you for every last dime or every bit of stock option increase. Problem with that is you might find people who get more compensation that they really deserve based upon their contribution. And then that person sets expectations that the next time you consider reevaluating their compensation, they're going to overly negotiate. Now, we don't live in a perfect world where people are just going to say, you know, you offer them 50,000 euros and they say accept. You know, they can make a counter or something, but if this person's going to try to nickel and dime you and create issues about this, even during the honeymoon phase, like when you don't even really hire them, imagine what happens post-marriage. It's not going to be good. And also, it's a waste of your time to deal with all this stuff. If they really know that they're going to be working with a startup, they know that you're cash constrained and you're under a time crunch. If they keep on focusing on compensation, then it's either not a good fit, or you could figure out ways to trade intangibles for like remote working or work from home days or whatnot. So yes, where's the talk about culture? I'm supposed to tell you like, hey, work hard together, be good, love each other, go to church on Sunday, sing Kumbaya and whatnot. But I could, I could sit here and tell you, like, I'm going to build a company. It's going to be the most ethical, greatest company ever, and everyone's going to love it. But that's great. That's all on a piece of paper. If I haven't gone out there and tested those values and shown to people why these are important and these are our core values, then it's worthless garbage. So before I got to Google, I used to work at this machine shop, and I started there when I was like 12 years old, and the hiring process was great. This new kid came to our elementary school, and he was rich, and I was poor, and I was like, oh, wait, I want to be rich one day. So I went and talked to his dad, and his dad ran this factory, and I was like, hey, I noticed you got a lot of money. Can I get a job? And he's like, sure. So I started working for him, like, cleaning floors and whatnot, and I worked there for 10 years, from sweeping floors all the way working to the front office, negotiating contracts and things like that. But one thing about the shop is that the owner of the shop was extremely ethical, and during the financial crisis, there was another factory that was going to be supplying us with parts, and this was an upstart factory. The manager was just inundated with debt, about to collapse, and the manager really wanted a contract from us, so he underbid the contract. And my manager, our company was suffering too, made the decision and looked at the contract and said to the other CEO, there's no way you're making money on this. You're going to be hurting yourself. So I want you to revise this at a higher rate so I can pay you actually for your time. That's ethics. That is really what a principle is, part of the culture. And that's someone who's walked the talk doing it. So for yourself, when you're first starting out, you don't have enough experience in the market to do this. You really need to start thinking about codifying your culture when you get to the point when you're going to start scaling up your enterprise. So you can clearly say, hey, this company has gone through these experiences, this is how we've made our decisions, and this is what we value. And also the thing about culture too is there's not one culture that's going to work for every company. Like a software company might have a culture where it's like we value free thinking and people to challenge management and things like that. And we can do that because it's a software company. It's very easy to iterate things and think about stuff. But when you're in a hardware company that you have a very strict deadline on how to get things done, you might have more of a top-down command culture. So it really depends upon your org. If you are at the phase of wanting to codify your culture, I have some resources online that I can share with you guys to talk about it. Okay, so yes, this is when things go good, but what to do when things start imploding. So this is a quote from Ben Horowitz. So you guys can read the quote, because I really hate when people read the quote. It's like, obviously, you guys got it there. So yeah, when I thought about this talk and everything, I've noticed that, of the startups that actually maybe get acquired or they go IPO, that's 0.0001% of the population. The rest implode for various reasons. And I was thinking, like, hey, all these people are struggling here, but they're struggling in silence. You never hear their stories. So I wanted to grab some of the stories that I've seen and share them with you guys, so maybe when you're in tough situations, you can make the right decisions. So yes, layoffs and firing, it's terrible. No one wants to talk about it, but it has to happen sometimes. So when you're making a decision to fire someone, I kind of go from the mantra of, people go like, hey, we should hire quickly, hire anyone you can, and just scale, scale, scale. But the problem with that is you're going to hire a lot of people who do not fit your requirements, and they might have helped you at that one point you needed them, but down the road they're going to cause plenty of other issues. So then what do? You fire slowly instead. You give them 30,000 different chances. You try to rejigger the requirements for the job, but it's still not working. So instead you need to think about hiring slowly and firing quickly. You have to understand, hey, every precious second I have in this startup is another dollar coming out of my pocket from someone who's not producing and not doing their job correctly. If you've done your job as a manager and set up the requirements of making it clear that they know what's expected of them, and you've given them the proper warnings, and there isn't outside issues influencing their work performance, like, hey, family members die, tragedies, people get sick, that's stuff that warrants you to understand that their job performance is suffering and you should give them leeway. But if these people aren't producing and doing what you're telling them to do, you need to consider firing them and move on, because your company depends upon it. But more importantly, if you have someone subpar working in your company, it's going to lower the morale from everyone else, because they're going to start working around that person. They're going to slow things down at your organization. They're going to start talking behind this person's back. It's going to become very political, and you don't want that. Regarding other companies who fire quickly, Zappos, for instance, if you go through their whole entire training process that costs them tens of thousands of dollars to do, within your first couple of weeks, if you don't like the company, they'll pay you $2,000 to leave. And that's a nice way for them to incentivize you to leave their organization. Luck and bad luck. So first thing you'll notice is it says all these percentages do not add up to 100%. These are exit surveys from 101 companies that have gone bottoms up or gone bankrupt in the last year or so, and these are the multitude of reasons of why they went out of business. And the top three is, no market need, ran out of cash, and not the right team. I'm a believer about when it comes to the market need that you can get the best management team of all time together and put them into a market that has no need, and the only thing that will survive that situation is the market. Their reputations will get destroyed and they will get terminated. Now, if you have a fantastic market and you get people who aren't the most brilliant people, whatever, there's so much opportunity for growth and such less competition in that market that they will find their success in their own way. So going back to the scaling up aspect of building your startup, there is the communications bottleneck. So this lists layers of management on the left-hand side and your employee count. So based upon some research we've done at Google, we've seen that an average manager can have no more than about 7 direct reports. And the reason why is you'll see on the right-hand side is that for each additional report you add to a company, that's the additional relationships a person will have to manage. So for instance, if I had 2 employees, or I would have the relationship with employee 1 and the relationship with employee 2, and then employee 1 would also have the relationship with me and employee 2, and that continues to grow. And so there's more issues that the manager has to worry about. So eventually what you need to start doing is layering your organization so there's a clear management hierarchy, and also there's clear communications on what needs to happen for the organization to continue to grow. Zappos is doing something called halocracy, where there's no management structure. The jury's still out on how it's working. What we've seen so far is their attrition rate has skyrocketed because people are kind of used to having some type of hierarchy, and people like being able to say, hey, this is who's responsible for this and that. So these are the Q&A questions that I got from you guys over email. So the first question that does not form me out correctly was, if we have a position that's open and we have a junior employee that's not quite there yet, should we coach that employee to that position and get them ready for it, or should we look for someone else? If you're in a startup and you're pre-market fit and every dollar is critical, you need someone who can produce right away. So the best thing to do is to bring in the external talent that can produce and get stuff done. Regarding coaching that employee, if you eventually think that employee will have a future in that situation, find opportunities for that employee to interact with that new hire to see if they can get side projects and continually grow. What are the traits you look for in a first startup sales hire? Selling for a large organization that already has a proven model gets to the point where the salespeople have created a playbook that anyone can read and pretty much know how to sell a product. When you're building a startup, you don't really know what your value proposition is or if anyone wants it. So you need a salesperson who's able to get the information from the market and work it back into their sales pitch and let you and your product managers know what the customers are thinking. So you need someone who understands what an MVP is, someone who understands how to work for a startup, and someone who knows how to build their own sales strategies. You will not probably get that from someone who's a junior sales rep or whatnot. Are there certain key hires that you shouldn't outsource? I would say anything that's your secret sauce. Basically, if you're an app developer and you're making apps, your whole technical team should be inside your company. It should not be outsourced, because when you outsource someone, you lose the ability of maintaining quality, and also you're a customer to this person, so you're competing for their time with other customers. What issues should we be aware of when you're hiring interns? Some of you probably are not paying them, so you get what you pay for. So a lot of them are like, oh, I'm just doing this for fun and whatnot. So I wouldn't set your expectations super high for them. And that's not saying there hasn't been interns who have been amazing. but I wouldn't give them super critical projects for your company. And when you do interview them, I would look at what extracurriculars they're doing outside of college. Do they have any, have they failed in anything? Have they shown any entrepreneurial streaks of being able to run their organizations? Do they know how to discipline themselves? Because if they don't know how to discipline themselves, it's like, now you're great. I have a company, and now I have a babysitting business, and it's just not good. How important is performance evaluation of employees in the initial startup phase? I think it's very important, but you don't have to super formalize it. It could be in your regular one-on-ones, like, hey, this is how the last couple of weeks have gone. You've done X, it's got great results, or actually you've done X. We don't think it was correct, but this is how you can improve. And from there, you can iterate on how formal you can make it. You could make it Google Forms, or you send out, or use Typeform. You send out a form and have people fill out their performance review and go from there. But you want it to make it as easy as possible for you to do that does not take that much cognitive overhead. Because if it turns into a situation where you're spending more time administrating it and less time giving out feedback, then you have an issue. How do you fire early hires? How do you fire friends? Firing early hires, now, I'm going to say this like not including the legal ramifications for certain countries, because like for certain countries here in Europe, you got to do like a potato sack race, and then you got to swim an ocean, pay them off, and things like that. But besides all that stuff, if you made it clear to this employee what your expectations are, and you give them time to work on it, and you have documented that they are not turning things around, then it's time for you to fire the employee. And also if you know the employee's outside circumstances. How do you fire friends? It's much easier to build a friendship from like a business relationship than it is to like get a friend and turn that into a business relationship, and it's tough. You just gotta talk to them straight and be like, hey, you know, I'm taking on other people's money, and it's my responsibility to make sure this actually turns into a product, and fortunately, you're not producing on this end. I still love you as a friend, but for this role that I have you in here, I just don't think it's gonna work out, and go from there. How do you structure compensation for early employees but not founders when you're at an angel seed stage? Compensation is really an art. I would say you have to determine how early the employees joined and what are kind of the market norms for that position. So if your company is a tech company, they really value engineers, then you're going to want to have your compensation and your stock structure more tailored towards engineers. If your company is more of a sales organization, you're about closing clients, then you're going to want to make sure your compensation structure goes more towards finding world-class salespeople. But I will say in general, though, regarding salaries, you're going to be paying salaries that are lower to market, but higher on the option side. Should your developer CTO be the highest paid person on your team? It really depends upon the organization and how important they are for your goals and objectives. Are there any good platform sources for good quality, lower cost talent? No. Okay. It's like, I want my cake and eat it too. No, we can't do that. There's always trade-offs involved. If you're going to go outsource to someone who's super high quality, realize they're going to charge you a high premium, and it's based upon their schedule. How can HR departments make values live in a startup company? Culture starts from the interaction from the founders. If the founders are not bought on in culture, then it's not going to work. You can bring in HR to come out with a mission statement and values and whatnot, but mostly everyone's going to look at that like it's whack because they just saw the CEO down the street stealing from someone or doing something unethical. So if your founders are not bought into what your culture is, then you really can't do anything. If anything, HR can help amplify what the culture is in the organization, make it clear people see what the values are and things like that. But if the CEO and the executives aren't living the values, then it's not going to work. How do you apply inbound recruiting techniques, and what is your approach on employer branding? I would see for when you're doing inbound recruiting techniques, like number one, is like when I think of techniques, there's no strategy to like find the best employees or close X employees. It's more about what your personal style is. If you're feeling like you're doing something just because someone told you at a presentation like this, well, now I'm being critical. Now I'm being hypocritical. But anyways, if you're doing something because you just read it in TechCrunch and you thought it was a good idea, people are going to see that's inauthentic. It's not really your style. So figure out what your true style is, and then make that come out in your emails. When we were acquiring companies, sometimes at Google, I get to see some of the offer letters. I saw a husband and wife who had a company, and they took funny pictures of themselves, like doing faces and whatnot, and they posted all of on the offer letter, and it was just really cute and endearing. That was something unique about their style. What is the amount or extent, if any, which managers in small startups should be interested in personal life problems of the team for the purpose of creating a cohesive team in order to improve work, motivation, loyalty, and et cetera? That's really cultural specific, because in America, we're known for being really standoffish and like, business is here, life is here. If you just lost your family, don't bring it into work. In Latin America, like from what I've experienced in Latin culture, it's more of like, we need to know who you are as a person, how you treat your family, how you're outside in the community, before we think about getting involved in business. And I think a lot of it, too, is in America, we're very litigious because people are constantly moving around. We use law to enforce norms. Or in some other societies, people aren't moving around as a lot. It's more about who you know and what your value is in the community. If someone is suffering in your organization and it's in your face, you, as a human being, you need to talk to that person and see what's going on. Give them some time, talk to them, acknowledge it. You got to be a human first. But regarding like bringing politics to work and things like that, it's never a good scenario, because there's always going to be someone who believes in something different. It could be something like, this politician came out and said, all humans should have the right to live, yay, you know, humans should have oxygen, or humans should not be slaughtered. And there's going to be one random person that says, oh yeah, all humans should be killed. And now I'm offended that the organization supported this. So it's best to understand, like, as some organizations have talked about originally, like, you know, bring your whole self to the company. And now some companies are thinking, no, bring your best self to the company. Like, don't talk about political issues, because it can create a slippery slope in your organization, and it could marginalize some people. Do you have any tips on how to interview interns? I had to do this as a part of my job, and I struggled very much. I kind of went over that. Look for growth aspects, look for discipline, realize that we're dealing with interns. You're basically playing a slot machine. What are the steps you take in merger process to integrate Google culture, and what are the barriers? So this is my old presentation. Damn it. Okay. So anyways, I was going to have a slide right here that had a slot machine. And I was like, oh, why aren't you talking about mergers and acquisitions? You are an M&A guy. And the reason why is because you guys should not be thinking about acquisitions whatsoever. It is a complete gamble to do so in the first place. What you're dealing with here in most startups is survivorship bias. There are hundreds of millions of people that have decided to create a company, and most of them have failed. Then some of them have gotten to an incubator. Then a good portion of them have failed. Some of them gotten seed round funding, and then most don't get A or B, and then you see smaller and smaller numbers. But then you always see on TechCrunch, so-and-so company got acquired. And it's like, well, that idiot made $100 million. Why can't I do the same thing too? Well, what you're dealing with is in business there's a gigantic luck component, hence my imaginary slot machine. You can do your best work ever, but just the market can be against you. What's that company that delivers groceries to your house now? It's based in, what starts with an A? I don't know. What's the company's name? They sell everything almost. No, Webvan. So that started in early 2000s. They were delivering, I started with A, I screwed you with that one. They started in the late 90s, early 2000s. And they had the exact same idea as Amazon. I mean, they would deliver groceries to you. See, I was in Silicon Valley during the tech bubble, so I saw this stuff happen. They would deliver groceries to you, and it was a great business idea, but the market wasn't ready for it. Yet Amazon's here, and they're pretty much using the same playbook, and it's working. The person crapped out. For instance, like 50, 60% of the people in this auditorium are females right now. If you were female and tried to start a company now, it could work. If you're a female in America back in the 1940s and 50s, your place was in the kitchen and you couldn't even get involved in entrepreneurship. Would we call our grandmothers and our mothers and aunts or whatnot like not hard workers or not successful or whatnot? No, we would say the luck of the time did not allow them to actually have the opportunity to be successful. So for acquisitions and getting acquired by Google, it is another pool of the slot machine that someone internally in Google or someone in LinkedIn or someone in Facebook wants to acquire your company, and that you have the right things to offer. You're already gambling in a slot machine. Why would you want to reach over and pull onto another slot machine, then play 21, and then bet your car on the roulette tables? Focus on this one slot machine you're on right now, is building your company, making sure you're building a product that users want, making sure that you're building a good team, and making sure eventually you can build something as a business model that's sustainable. Don't count on the exit, because 99.9% of the time, the exit doesn't happen. Now you're going to say, well, wait a minute, but what about the people who did make the exit? They're on TechCrunch, blah, blah, blah. Well, 85% of the companies that get acquired by other large companies, when they do get acquired, it's called an acqui-hire, which is just a recruiting exercise. We basically don't want your product, we don't want your company, we don't want your IP, we just want your employees, and then we're going to put your employees into another product. As far as all the money you invested in your startup, you're not getting paid back for any of that, and your investors might get 15 cents in the dollar. It's kind of like corporate welfare just for startups. Then let's talk about the companies who do get acquired. Oh, that company got like $10 million. Oh, fantastic. Well, when Facebook was acquired, when Facebook acquired WhatsApp, it was acquired for 10% of Facebook's value. So Mark Zuckerberg got an oversized novelty check and was like, hey, $10 billion. And he walked over and he gave it to the CEO of WhatsApp. And the CEO of WhatsApp said, oh, I have $10 billion. I can't wait to go to work for Monday with Mark Zuckerberg. No, in real life, he would say, screw this. I'm going to Hawaii. I'm not working anymore. So what Zuckerberg and other companies do is they say, okay, here's your oversized novelty check, but this oversized novelty check does not pay out until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years from now. So you have to still work for us and get things done and still produce. So you thought the grind was hard working a startup, the grind is now intensified because you have to produce on our level, and if you do not produce, you see that golden parachute of money, it's not going to happen.